All right, up next we got Destination Y.
Okay. Well, since we are always talking about Catholicism for some reason when I'm here, why not
Well, I
talk
think
about it
that's because you
again?
bring it up.
Yeah, I guess. But I love talking about it. It's so amusing because I
Hmm.
remember when I used like exactly the same arguments as you guys, so it's kind of strange to listen to you. So
Hmm.
let's talk about Mary.
Okay.
Why why do you think like okay, so we Catholics teach that Mary was immaculately conceived, which means that she did not have original sin at birth, or
Uh-huh.
rather at conception. And so our rationale for saying that is complex, but basically it's a dogma, and we believe it. So what I would challenge you uh, to think about here is that the Immaculate Conception isn't just a dogma; it's actually a necessity for the Mary to be immaculate for the salvation plan to even work in the first place. Because um, Jesus had to be without sin, and his nature was entirely human. He took it from Mary. He couldn't
Hmm.
superpose his own divine nature on it and overpower it. It had to be separate yet united. So he took it from Mary. If he took it from Mary, obviously it has to be sinless, because that's
Hmm.
how original sin is propagated.
Hmm.
It is by relation. And so God can like give Jesus a grace, and he won't have the sin. Okay, but I think that's a real problem, because to not be born with original sin by grace is like it's like you're telling Jesus that he's born, and then immediately, like at the moment of his birth, he has a loan to pay. So he has do you see the problem with having Jesus be given grace? I mean, he isn't supposed to be given grace at all. He's supposed to do the law like 100%. He's not supposed to be given any graces. He's supposed to do what we cannot do so that we can get graces. Um, so I think that's a problem, because it says in the Bible that from birth we are indebted, that we need to pay up something
All right, so what's the
in the
question?
face of God. The question really is, how do you have Jesus as utterly sinless as immaculate?
Well, I could see Jesus as being sinless because of the fact that he wasn't born through the sexual coitus, um, in the sense as people are. Mary was a virgin when she conceived Jesus, and so it was the Father that had implanted uh, the Son within the Mary and caused her to be born, or caused her to be birthing Jesus. So simply because the Father had caused Mary to carry Jesus as a child, uh, that whole thing there proves uh, that can be sinless. It doesn't have to be with Mary being sinless and free from original sin. Just the very fact that the divine nature touches into that nullifies it, because you don't have the seed of man infiltrating it at that point, nor that contaminate it. So it's because simply, okay, the Father God uh, gives Mary Jesus, and she is pregnant with Jesus. That is all it needs, because God can do anything and modify his creation in any way. And especially in the fact that this isn't occurring naturally, but rather supernaturally, many ways can happen that it is differing with how normally the outcome turns out today, concerning how we understand the original sin and the birthing of children. Whereas we would have it with, you have to have sex, have the seed mixed in with the eggs, and so on. In this case, that wasn't the case. It was simply that, he was born in there. There wasn't no mingling of the seed of Adam and Eve, man and woman, that was being caused of that. This was why it was such a miracle, a supernatural thing. So that's how we can have a sinless Jesus and a sinless nature.
But you basically said that the divine nature supercharged the human nature, because like you need to realize that the only thing God added to the union was the person of Jesus. He did not make any flesh. The flesh came from Mary, because it is written in the Bible that the woman shall conceive. So
and I said that it was that the whole sin nature is nullified simply because that he was placed in there by the Father. As long as you have that, that's all it takes.
So you're saying that sin is propagated by the line of the fathers?
I'm saying that because the Father, meaning God the Father, he planted the child, planted Jesus, no matter who it was in, Mary or Joseph, because God the Father planted it there, boom, there goes away the original sin for Jesus. Because God is able to do whatever he wants, and he is possible. Huh?
I don't think that's logical.
So God's illogical?
He wants.
So God's illogical?
No, he's absolutely logical. It wouldn't make sense. I'm just saying that he can do what he wants, but he didn't do it like that. And if he did it like that, it would be grace.
Okay. Wouldn't you think that's a grace then? Because Jesus is also, come to bring grace?
I didn't hear you there. You cut out.
I said, wouldn't you think that would be grace then? Because Jesus has come to deliver grace?
Well, no, he came to accomplish the law,
right?
And that gave us grace, but he didn't have grace.
And to deliver salvation by dying upon the cross.
Yeah, but he didn't need help. Like in the strict sense, he didn't need God to say okay, or you can do this, so I'm doing it for you. That didn't happen. So
I have no idea what you're talking about at this point. You're just
look at
going
it like this, okay? The human nature, 100% of the human nature came from Mary, 100%, meaning that was in Mary's gene pool. Well, that was transferred to Jesus, and Jesus, what he had from the Father was his divine personhood.
Okay.
And the Holy Spirit was responsible for putting the two together.
Okay.
And so since everything human and that original sin is proper to human beings, that means that if Mary had original sin, it would infallibly be transferred to Jesus. So, and at that point, you would probably say okay, God stopped it from happening, but if he did that would be grace, because normally it would have been given to Jesus. And if it was a grace, that's a problem.
Okay.
And
so here's the thing, though. This whole idea of the Immaculate Conception, though, that Mary was without sin, is not only very unbiblical, but is also ahistorical concerning even the early church about this. So, I mean,
I'm not talking about the historical basis for this. I'm just talking logically. I think it's a logical necessity.
I said the biblical basis, that there is absolutely nowhere within the scriptures that proclaims that Mary is sinless, but rather points to Mary as have sinned, even during the lifetime of Jesus.
I disagree, and I have the entire weight of the church to back me up on that.
First, I thought you
But
just said that you weren't relying on that.
yeah, to
But yeah,
prove it
you are.
from the Bible. But I'm trying to explain to you that it's a logical necessity. It's not
How
even
is it
like
how is it a
people
logical
could not.
necessity?
Because as I said, 100% of Jesus' nature came from Mary,
Okay.
meaning that if he had not received a grace, hypothetically, he would be
All right.
sinful at
Then
birth.
let's play that game then. Okay, so God was in the time of the flood, angry at the depravity and wickedness of uh, mankind during that time, correct?
Yes,
And how is he going to fix that?
yes, he intended to fix the problem
How?
by sending Jesus ultimately.
Well, that was the thing, though, is at that time, that wasn't the solution. During the time of Noah, he was to send a flood to wipe out humanity.
Yes,
Okay, so, but not every human being was wiped out, weren't they?
no.
Right. So, with Noah and his family still alive, didn't they have that same uh, sinful nature that God said he was ashamed of humanity for?
Oh, it wasn't the sinful nature God was ashamed of to the
Okay.
point of flooding the entire earth. It was just that people indulged so much in that sinful nature that it became unbearable. It was just ridiculous. Everyone was doing evil all the time.
Right. And so he was going to wipe away these people.
Yes,
And so why not just wipe away Noah and completely just start over and make some new Adam?
because he was a righteous man. And
Right. But
God
did he?
doesn't deal with his creation like that. He doesn't want to like make a clean slate. That would
Okay.
basically be a failure. That would
Right,
be like admitting that.
but again, the objection could be made. Then that is illogical, and God's not really thinking logically in that. Just like you would be saying for what I stated earlier, that that's illogical to simply allow Jesus, even in Mary, who would have original sin, to then be born uh, without original sin from Mary, because simply that God is able to perform miraculous divine miracles that don't always uh, match, because that's the thing, these miracles violate uh, the laws of nature, and
Yeah,
so
I understand that.
and
Yeah.
therefore under a certain definition that would be considered illogical.
Well, if you talk to an atheist, I guess so, but
Well, I
we're
mean, you're
Christians.
kind of utilizing atheist logic there.
Well, no, no, I admitted that God could make something happen to not give
Okay.
Jesus the thing, but
Uh-huh.
it would be in the parameters of nature. Like no matter how you turn it around, God will never be able to like make a square circle or something like that. So from the Christian
Uh-huh.
point of view, it needs to be conceivable to be possible.
Hmm.
So I would say yes, God could have stopped Jesus from getting the original sin by giving Jesus a special grace, but the problem would be at that point that Jesus had a grace at all because he's not supposed to have any graces. He's supposed to be the new Adam, the one who does everything right and doesn't have to be excused. You see what I'm meaning? Because if he had to be excused, it means he was on a short leash. Basically, he had to like complete his mission, or else he would have personal repercussions because he would be loaning grace basically. Because when we receive grace, it isn't it isn't our grace. I mean,
Okay.
it's like we didn't earn that. Have earned what he had at birth.
Okay.
That he would just have been given that like
Just show
to
me the
separate
text. Show me the
grace
text that
from
says Show me the text in the Bible where it says that Mary is free from original sin. Show me that.
I could point you towards the salutation of Archangel Saint Gabriel, but you would deny that and go back to the Greek, and I don't know Greek, so I couldn't compete on that level.
Well, that's not me denying or rejecting it. That's me accepting the passage and how it's supposed to be taken and correcting.
Well, yeah, because you're going to make your translation basically.
It's not the translation; it's the original Greek language.
Well, exactly. You're going to use the original Greek language to make your translation, but I have scholars on my side who can read Greek just fine and who disagree. So
that's appealing to authority, and that is and that's a logical fallacy there, sir. So
no, not necessarily.
Yes, it is actually. Just you go look it up. Go look it up. Go look it up, sir.
No, I understand what ad populum is, but I'm just saying
it's not ad populum. It's appeal to authority fallacy. No, it's appeal to authority fallacy.
Yeah, but that's not a problem right now. I don't think so.
Well, when you're committing a logical fallacy, saying, "Well, I have scholars, therefore that's true," that's not a good case. Actually, provide the evidence and the argumentation provided by these scholars, and then we go into that.
No, I think that's ridiculous, because at that point you would ask like every lady to.
So going over evidence is ridiculous. Understandable.
No, I think going over evidence all the time is ridiculous.
Why?
No one can do that.
That is what people do.
No one does that. You don't understand. Like, even you who are a Protestant, you don't know all doctrines that exist. You haven't analyzed everything that could be accepted as doctrine.
Well, whenever concerning the doctrine of the Protestants, yeah, we go over the evidence that is presented of our faith historically.
Like that's not a sheep. That's not how sheeps work. Sheeps are supposed to analyze, but they're not supposed to analyze everything as if they were like the pastors. There is a certain degree of understanding that they have to have, but they can't go in depth as if it was their job.
Where in the Bible does it say you must not examine all things? That you have to be limited in what you can examine?
No, I said you don't have to examine all things as in understanding everything at a doctoral level. Like, for example,
I'm not saying examine it at a doctoral level. I never said that at all. I'm saying just simply examine things.
No, that's what you're going to appeal to, because if
I did not. You can go back in this hangout and you will show what is actually said is just simply examining the evidence. Evidence doesn't automatically mean, scholarly academic. No, evidence means something you see, something that you can look at that has been provided as part of the argument for proving something. That's what evidence is. Evidence, for example, is, does sunblock exist? I see a bottle and cream. That is evidence. That's not a scholarly or doctoral thing. That's just examining things. So whenever I look at the scholarly and academic works that I have on my shelf, the evidences they provide are not things that you would expect only the scholars and the doctors to know. These are things that your average layman, Johnny Joe in the pew, can read and see and have access to, except it's written in a paragraph form to help him observe it, like it's a dictionary of information. So that is the thing. Evidence is evidence. It's not this issue of where you shouldn't observe or just look into evidence all the time. The fact is that we're looking at evidence to make a case, and so far the evidence about the biblical text is quite clear that it does not prove the idea of Mary being this sinless being. This is denied by the early church. This is denied by Scripture.
I don't think you understand. I didn't say that like discussing evidence was a bad thing. I just said that you can't demand.
No, I didn't say that you did either. You said that you have to do it all the time.
Yeah, all the time, as in like go to the deepest levels every single time. Like If you ask a random Catholic,
I never
like,
said do it
about
deeply.
Immaculate
I never said it deeply.
Conception, he's going to point you towards
You are
basic passages like
you are misinterpreting what I say very seriously. I just said looking at the evidence. I didn't say look at it deeply like you are PhD Johnny level 1000. I
yeah,
said
but that's still
looking
evidence.
yeah,
That's
looking
still evidence.
how do I know a penny exists? I'm looking at this thing there. That is
No,
evidence.
you're
That is
not
evidence by
differentiating
definition.
between. You're not differentiating between like what
I
I
never
would call like.
differentiated in general. I simply just said evidence. And
Well,
everyone
that's
knows what the
the
word
bad thing.
evidence
I'm
is. You are
telling
making
you.
this way too complicated than it needs to be.
No, that you don't quite understand. You know, I'll tell you that it's okay to demand justification for people's beliefs, but you shouldn't expect to have exhaustive explanation time you demand.
Okay, I don't expect an exhaustive explanation. I want a simple explanation. Where in history or the Bible do you see Mary being sinless? Just a simple explanation.
But I didn't start to believe in the Immaculate Conception because I saw evidence for the Immaculate Conception.
I didn't.
I
I
began to
didn't
believe
care.
in
I
it
am asking you to give the evidence.
because I can like point you to passages, but you're going to go back to the Greek, and I can't follow you on that line. That's
Why
I
not?
didn't, because I don't know Greek. It would be ridiculous for me to try and debate with you on that.
Okay, would you decide to go back and examine these things utilizing the Greek from scholars and such then? Since you do say you appeal to scholars when you examine these issues?
It's the Immaculate Conception.
Why not?
Because frankly, I never cared much. It was just the papacy which interested me, which proved everything.
So you don't care to have your mind changed on this issue and simply just believe without ever having it questioned or doubted?
Well, it's impossible because everything rests on the papacy. So if you want to destroy that, at best, you could attack the papacy.
Sure. I mean, we can go to that for the next question then, since we got other people in here. They got to get their questions answered as well.